Oh, Lordy, we in some trouble. But that's all right. We're going to figure it out. We're going to figure it out, and we're going to do what we got to do to stay focused. Joining me right now is someone whose voice you have all heard a couple of times here on Urban View. We're just sort of all now looking to her as our resident lawyer. She is Ikie Speaks, and she is joining us today, former prosecutor for New York County's District Attorney's Office. She is now a criminal defense attorney and an adjunct professor at a CUNY school. Shout out to CUNY at New York City College of Technology and at St. John's Law School. So because she's a CUNY sister, she's my sister because y'all know I'm at the Center for Law and Social Justice at Medgar Evers College. So Ikie Speaks, welcome to the Lurie Daniel Favor Show. Welcome back to Urban View, where you have been resident for the past few days.
Thank you for having me, Lurie. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be on with you. My sister-in-law, and I'm a CUNY grad. I graduated from John Jay too, so I'm definitely supporting the CUNY. Yes.
Shout out to the University of New York, which our city needs to fully fund, so tuition is free again. We are so grateful that you're here. Listen, I went out thinking we were just going to talk about Chevron doctrine. I thought we were going to talk about the homeless now being able to be criminalized, and now we got whole ass presidential immunity.
Yes. Yes.
What is happening? Is this as crazy as I feel? What is happening?
Yes, absolutely. It's the Supreme Court has gone off the rails. It's more than just a power grab. It is they have a super majority and they are exercising it with impunity. Right? Because who's gonna stop them? And so this decision just came down. I was actually trying to read it when I was talking to Jonah. I was literally shaking, Lurie. I'm like, are you serious right now? So I obviously couldn't read it all. I tried to get through the syllabus a little bit. Looks like it's 6-3. Right, 6-3 opinion with Sotomayor, Kagan, and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson dissenting. And they basically look like they have said that in order to preserve our democracy and the separation of powers, we need to make sure that we ensure that the president can fully function and do his duties without fear, and that he should have absolute immunity.
This is
how
is this not a king? This wasn't the whole Revolutionary War, the whole establishment of America fought. So didn't that happen so that we would not have this?
Every decision that they have issued since Dobbs has been this trek down historical precedent and what's happening in our country. And we have never been a country that has said we want just one leader, or we want someone to have unchecked power. And in the decision, I saw that they say it doesn't mean that Trump can do things outside of the office. So it won't affect his document case, right? Because the allegations of the document case are after he was president. So he's not free from that. Jack Smith still can pursue that case. But it looks like,
assuming Judge Luce Cannon in Florida, which her name is Eileen Cannon, but Judge Luce Cannon, I'm assuming she doesn't, do what she's been hired to do. She's auditioning to be the 7th of the conservative justices on the Supreme Court. God forbid.
Yeah. Notwithstanding what Judge Cannon is doing, right? At least she doesn't have the help of the Supreme Court to kick her case. She actually still has to do her job, but it looks like it may be over in Judge Chutkan's case in DC.
Wow.
Yeah, so I want to finish reading that, but we do still need to talk about the other cases because they're important. And another case came down in connection with the Chevron case that affects the statute of limitations in these federal cases, right? So that came down today as well. So if you compare, if you put that together with Chevron being overturned, this court has literally stripped federal agencies of their power, their capacity to do the job that they were created to do. We have these agencies so that we can rely on their expertise, on their technical know-how, right? We want to defer to what they know. And this court has just said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that anymore. We've been doing that for 40 years. We're not going to do that anymore.
Now, this full granting of immunity, it wasn't a granting of immunity to Donald Trump, if I'm understanding. And I'm just looking at the syllabus myself. This was a full granting of immunity to the office of president.
Correct.
Which means that technically Joe Biden currently holds full immunity. Is that what we're to understand from this?
Yeah. That it should stretch to any president. It should stretch to any president. Yes.
But the challenge that poses for those of us who want to be good and decent is that Joe Biden, I think, also wants to be good and decent, to quote Dr. Caretha Mitchell. Shout out to her, who's now a professor of English at Boston University. But because he actually, I think, wants to be good and I mean, he said he's not going to pardon his son, right? You don't. I believe that would have been a completely opposite answer had the former president been in office. So he is not going to act in way. Now the Supreme Court has said, well, you could be the president gone wild at the White House. He is not the type of person who's going to do that. This is a ruling that, while for the office of presidency, is really for a president like Donald Trump, who desires this sort of immunity and ability to do whatever the hell he wants while sitting in that seat.
That's true. But now that this has come down, I think Joe Biden should revisit his position on pardoning his son. Pardon your son. Pardon your son. Do it. Do it. Because we know if Trump was in office, he would do it. He would do it. He's done. He's pardoned his friends. He's done it.
Right. Why
not?
So
why not?
At this point, anything is possible. I just need him to. Could he stay in office? I don't know. We got to talk about what Joe Biden.
He can stay in office. You know what? The other thing we saw yesterday, Taraji on. She was saying something about we've got 3 Supreme Court seats up for grab, and I was like, wait, what? We do? We don't. Mm-hmm. We may not have any.
I think she's hoping if Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas resign, and then folks are saying Sonia Sotomayor, she's also getting up in age. They're saying that she may also be ripe for resignation.
No, I don't. Listen, let's look. We got to look at how long the justices have sat, right? Let's look at the ones that are just recently retired. We got Breyer. Stephen Breyer retired. He was 84, 83, 84, right? Ginsburg, she died 87. 87. So we've got Thomas is 76, right? And I think Alito is 75.
Right.
And so if Joe Biden wins, they're not going anywhere. Why would they? They can hold on till 80. I mean, Biden is 81. Let's look at the math, right? I don't want us to get ahead of ourselves in thinking that, there are some Supreme Court seats up for grabs, because these people will hold on to these seats until there's a Republican president to replace them.
Well, then could he expand the court? Does any of this expand his ability to expand the court, this immunity decision? Because I know there are a lot of people already talking about that, and my understanding is that you still got to have 60 votes in the Senate to make something like that happen. So immunity might allow him to go, again, president's gone wild, but when it comes to expanding the court, you got to also have the votes in the Senate. Am I right on that, or is there?
You're right. You're absolutely right on that, and I don't think that that's going to happen, because we can't get Congress to do anything, right? I don't think that's going to happen. We just don't have the numbers there. And I don't know if he can do it by executive order. I can't imagine he can. I don't see that happening. He could try, but I don't see that happening.
Hell, then they could take it to court and see what the Supreme Court says about that.
And you already know what the Supreme Court's going to say. No, right? This Supreme Court, which is the most hypocritical Supreme Court that I've seen, they talk about the originalism and they want to make sure we're doing things historically correct. And a lot of these decisions are coming down based on history and things that are not written in the Constitution, right? So abortion is not written in the Constitution. You know what else is not written in the Constitution? Judicial review is not written in the Constitution. What the snap? You're doing is not even written in the Constitution. Your power to even review these laws from Congress is not written in the Constitution. It comes from, you gave it to yourself in Marbury versus Madison. You gave that to yourself. So what are we doing? We really doing?
We have the ultimate in power grabs here, and it's power grabs for the most evil. My audience knows that I have, as a child, I spent some time living in a shelter with my family. We went through a lot of economic hardships. So the homelessness and housing insecurity are issues that are very close to my heart. When I was in college, shout out to the members of my gospel choir, because I came home one day from working 3 jobs, trying to stay in school, had gotten an eviction notice from the dorm room, and these beautiful souls, my college friends, had put grocery bags, brown bags of groceries in front of my room because they knew I was hungry, right? I didn't have money. I could not eat. And so the idea of what the Supreme Court has done when it comes to criminalizing homelessness, that to me, out of all the decisions, I mean, they're all just god awful, but that one in
Right.
particular spoke to something that was so evil. I feel like only Octavia Butler could envision what it would look like and how it could impact us. What should we know about this case criminalizing homelessness?
Well, the Supreme Court simply said, we're looking at the Eighth Amendment, right? And the Eighth Amendment is one of those constitutional protections that protects us from things that happen after we are charged with a crime, right? That's what it protects us from punishment, cruel and unusual punishment. It doesn't preempt a state from criminalizing conduct. Whatever that conduct is, that's some scary-ish, right? Because states are free to criminalize whatever conduct they so choose, whatever they choose. Remember, there was a time where we couldn't even make eye contact.
That's
right? They criminalize certain conduct, right? And so basically, the Supreme Court says free reign to criminalize any conduct you so choose. So as long as there's not status, right? Because that's basically what the argument was. You're criminalizing someone's status as a homeless person. And they're like, no, we're going to pick that apart. We're going to make this very nuanced. It's not that we're criminalizing the fact that they're homeless. We're criminalizing the conduct of the homeless. And that's different. It's not like Robinson back in California when they criminalized being an addict, right? This is status. We're not going to allow that. That's unconstitutional, right? But this is not that. They're saying you can't camp outside. A state should be able to say that. Yeah.
So you mentioned this example. We couldn't look white people in the eye. And I don't want to sit here for a minute because I always give this analogy whenever I'm doing a workshop or a program. And I always give the analogy, let's say Emancipation Proclamation, Civil War just ended. We're free. Like Ikie, you and I, we free. We made it. We done, child. Lord, glory, hallelujah, we are free. But our local jurisdiction passes some laws that we don't know about because the jurisdiction lawmakers are also slave owners or former slave owners since they can no longer have access to legal slavery. And so they pass some laws that criminalize things like being a vagrant, meaning that you're walking around and you don't have anywhere to go, right? Or they criminalize things like loitering rather,
yep.
and then vagrancy, not having a job, not having employment. So you don't have a job. That's a criminal act. You walk around with no place to go. You're just standing or sitting with no intentional place that you're going, no destination in mind. We're going to criminalize that. You look somebody white in the eye, we're going to criminalize that. And we're only going to allow these sets of laws to be applied to Black people. Sure, they're going to be everybody, but the only people who are going to weaponize them against are Black people, which means that I and you, Ikie, we just got free. We leave our our former master's plantation. And the moment we take a step off that plantation property, we are out the gate for the first time. We don't know where we're going because we don't have maps. We don't have a final destination in mind. We are trying to walk towards freedom. We think we're going north, but we're not really sure. We've been on this plantation our whole life. We don't have a job because we're no longer enslaved, and we have not signed a job contract, also known as a sharecropping contract. We don't own any land, so we don't have a place to stay. Everything about us, as soon as we step off that plantation property in this context, has been criminalized. And by the time we get to step 3 or 4, when them boys come running out the bushes, them D's come running out the bushes, and they put handcuffs on us and charge us, and then we are convicted of being homeless, being vagrants, loitering, and then we're sentenced to 5 to 10 years. The very plantation that we used to work on, that owner can come down to the prison and say, wait a minute, I see here you've got Lurie and Ikie. They used to work on my plantation. They know damn well how I like my crops. They know what to do. I ain't even got to train them anymore. How long have they been sentenced? 10 years, I'll take them. And all I got to do is sign out papers. And me and you, back on the same plantation we were on before because our status as free Black people was criminalized to me. And I'm waiting for you to push back on this. Please tell me that we're not back in that territory when it comes to this decision. There's got to be a way that we're not back in that territory.
Push back. I'm a compound. I'm sorry. I can't push back. I got to compound, right? Because let's put us now, right? Criminalizing and then add in the 13th Amendment.
Come on.
Shots fired. Shots fired. Add in the 13th Amendment, which says if you are convicted of a crime, right? We got an exceptions clause in our Constitution for slavery.
Wow.
Let me just say that again. We have an exceptions clause. Just think that when they were saying, we're going to abolish slavery, but somebody in the back was like, but we got to make sure we got We got some kind of way to get them back on over here. Right? And they were like, you're right. So let's make sure there's an exception. So if you are convicted of a crime, and it doesn't say high crime, it doesn't say misdemeanor, felony, it doesn't say violent crime, it says crime, any crime. If you are convicted of a crime, then you too can be subject to this here slavery.
That's right.
Right?
And I'm so glad that you said that it was that exception. That was a compromise, folks. Like,
Yes.
people came together. They were battling out, how can we let them technically free after this war, but still keep, it was a labor force of 4 million people. Plus the free blacks, who could now also be subjected to a broader interpretation of the 13th Amendment, which means even the free blacks are now potential slave labor. The homeless population, which in New York City, as you well know, shout out to our mayor, who I thought ran as a Democrat, but has very Republican policies. Those are my words, not yours. I ain't trying to get nobody else in trouble. I do this in this space, so you ain't got to comment on that. We just saw regulations coming from the city, which said essentially we can sweep the subways and clear them of all the homeless. Now, they said they were going to take them to mental health institutions, but they did not actually fund those mental health institutions to properly care for those people. But now, throw them in Rikers, Ikie, right, which still ain't closed, right, because if they ain't closed it, throw them in the MDC, get them in the Metropolitan Detention Center, throw them in the detention center, and here comes a corporation that needs free labor. The jails are overcrowded. We're going to have them earn their keep.
Yeah, 25 cents.
I've been saying that 25 cents an hour, at 25 cents an hour. I want to go say more, but we got a ton of calls that I want to also bring on. Do you mind if we get a couple of callers in here as well?
Oh, no, love it. Bring them on.
All right. Okay. So let's go to New York. We'll go to Tyrone in New York. Thank you for calling, Tyrone. You're on the Lurie Daniel Favors Show. What would you like to say this morning?
Thanks for taking my call, Ms. Daniels. Breathe, baby, breathe. We're going to make it through this.
Let me pause you there, Tyrone. Let me pause you there. What y'all interpret as passion and overhype, that's just a day ending in Y. So everybody's breathing very, very well. just don't you worry. We're going to be all right. But it's important that we know the magnitude of the situation. But go ahead, brother. What would you like to say?
We need you here, sister. We need you here. the legal system, we got to remember where this comes from. Remember the court, the Supreme Court made a ruling that there's no laws that any black man would have that a white man should pay attention to.
Down to respect.
They passed that.
We've been here before.
But listen, the Supreme Court, those people are dead, but that mindset is alive and well in that Supreme Court. They feel like they should be able to do whatever they want, when they want, and not be held responsible. We're dealing with toddlers in adult bodies. That's all they are. They like a child wants whatever they want. They don't care about the consequences of what they're asking for. They just want it. And that's what we're doing.
They want it now.
That's right.
You're absolutely right. Thank you for that. I appreciate that point. You're absolutely right. They're doing a mad grab for everything. They sense it falling apart and they're grabbing everything. Ikie, I have a question here in one of the show chats. Shout out to Kelly, who says, if presidents have immunity, does that mean they can no longer be impeached? What is this immunity ruling? I know you and I both are going to have to scramble and actually finish reading this decision. Does this mean that presidents can no longer be impeached?
No, because this decision would have to be subject to the Constitution, right? It can't overrule the Constitution. And the Constitution basically lists and says exactly what grounds the president can be impeached on. So no, absolutely not. The president can absolutely still be impeached.
Okay, well, we'll take a small favors. We'll take what we can get there.
Right.
Let's go now to Jerry in Florida. Thank you for calling, Jerry. Your thoughts this morning?
Well, it's disgusting, but we know these devils who we're dealing with. But back to the Supreme Court, I wanted to mention, and hopefully you can watch it. If you didn't get to see it, you had a busy weekend, the MSNBC special that they did on college admissions and affirmative action. Just wanted to touch on a few things. I don't know, sister, if you saw it. But I really got disgusted. I'm still sick to my stomach this morning. Of course, they went behind the scenes with Edward Bloom, who has went after us for 50 plus years.
Yeah.
But just to recap, Harvard has 61,000 applicants a year, of which only 1,900 are accepted. And one of the highlights was 45% or more are children of donors, legacy people, and applicants. And almost half of them aren't even qualified to be there.
That's
But
right.
Bloom and the Asian community, which they showed clearly, came after us.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was just so heart-wrenching to see how this ruling was done. And what I wanted to just touch it with, this thing was produced by two Asians, and there were some Asian allies who were with us. But, for Jewish people, to Bloom specifically, and they don't talk about his donors, when Jewish medical students couldn't get into Harvard because they had quotas to keep Jews out, they went to Howard University and Metairie, our black HBCUs. We didn't stand out there and say, you're taking away seats from us. We welcomed them.
Listen. When we're
Not
talking
like
about
us.
affirmative action, they not like us. Thank you, Ikie Speak. They not like us. When we're talking about affirmative action, and those cases were, all of us who were watching those cases knew that this is going to end up biting folks in the butt. People who were very excited to tear down race-based affirmative action thought that they were going to get a benefit, and are now realizing no special snowflakes for you. You literally now left the biggest class of people who don't belong in this space are these children of legacies, whereas you had black and brown students who act on point when it came to academics, on point when it came to scores, on point when it comes to potential, on point when it comes to outcomes, but you got rid of their pathway into this space, thinking it was going to open up more seats for you, not realizing we were only taking 2-3% of those spaces in the first place, but you got 45% of the student population that could not add properly without their daddy's wealth endowed calculator, and those are now the folks who are filling up all the seats. Unfortunately, chickens and roosting are something that we know a whole lot about, Ikie. And my question for you is, what are we to do with all of this? Where are we to go? Like, how are we to? I mean, my head hurts, and I woke up feeling really good this morning.
Yeah, no, I've been calling for a constitutional convention for a long time.
Oh, wait, I'm scared of that. No, wait, hold, time out. I'm scared of that. We ain't
You
organized.
scared of that? We need
I'm
that.
scared of that because the Project 2025 people, they're ready for a constitutional convention. We trying to figure out how come Victoria Monet's On My Mama is getting grant. Like, we trying to figure out that shit. We're not organizing. I'm scared of a constitutional convention. Ikie Speaks. I am. Wait, I just got the warning also for the time. Can you give us a few minutes after this commercial break?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, I want to talk about that constitutional convention. I am scared of a convention because I'm seeing, when I do my voter education work, I'm just trying to get people to understand that the president cannot build Wakanda. And when you vote, you're not going to walk out into a vibranium suit and a house with a weapons defense system waiting for you. That's not. So I feel like we do a constitutional convention. Lord help us. I really might have to use these passports, and I ain't got nowhere to go. I ain't got nowhere to go. But if you could just speak to briefly, we just have a minute in this segment, your thoughts on this affirmative action and how that also is a part of paving the way for Project 2025.
This court, again, it goes, the whole historical precedent it goes back to is we need to realize that the country wants to go back to where it was, I want to say, pre-Civil War amendments.
Like 1750s, maybe.
Yeah. That's where they want to be, right? And this is where they're taking us. And I feel like Sonia Sotomayor, when she said there are some times that after a decision I go into my chambers and I cry, because that is when you feel that abject powerlessness, and that's what I'm feeling now. I don't feel like there's anything we can do. Unfortunately, I feel powerless. I just haven't figured out what the pushback is, because we're not going to do expanding the court. We're not going to do term limits.
If we're serious about justice, we're going to have to be serious about getting engaged and involved. And Ikie, when it comes to what's happening in the wake of the Supreme Court, this granting of full immunity to the office of the president, this homelessness criminalization effort, the fact that now the justices and the politicians can get a little bit of bribery, just a little bit of bribery. We're in a moment where we, the people, going to have to be very, very serious and intentional about what is going forward. And so for me, this looks like a variety of ways. Number one, when is your city council meeting? When is your school board meeting? What did you put the calendar in your phone? Do you have your elected officials' information? Do you know what they're doing on any bill that is relevant to you and your people? It is going to require us to grow the fuck up when it comes to our civic engagement, our political engagement, because they are playing for keeps. But Ikie, you also said something else. federal judges. These are cases coming out of the federal courts. And as I recall, when Donald Trump left, he had been so intentional about planting these time bombs, these judiciary bombs in the judiciary,
There's drudgery in the judgery.
this drudgery that he had left. There were almost a quarter of the court was put there by him. These were judges that were unqualified. So one of the things that can happen is the intentional focusing on replacing these judges through attrition and through retirements with actual judges who are going to be willing to restore some semblance of justice. Do you see that as a possible place where perhaps we might be able to salvage this place from its worst demons?
It's one of the key things we need to focus on. I think it's one of the key things we need to focus on, because how cases get to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court doesn't have original jurisdiction, right? In a lot of these things. So they're getting these cases from the circuits. These circuit judges are the ones that are sending these cases to the Supreme Court. They look upon the land and they're like, who do we have down in the circuits who can send us what we need? Because they pick and they choose. They get thousands of requests to review cases. They pick and choose the ones that they want. Maybe 100, 150 cases, right? And they're not doing the things that they're supposed to do, like exercise judicial restraint, right? You're not supposed to answer a question you weren't asked. And they did that in Dobbs. They did. But then when they are asked the question, this is interesting, right? They did that in Dobbs. They didn't have to decide Roe. They could have ruled for Mississippi and not overturned Roe, and Mississippi could have still won. Right. But they were like, we have an opportunity to do it now, and we've got a supermajority. Right. So they grabbed that, another power grab. They grabbed that, and they've been doing that, but they won't do it when it'll hurt them. Right. Because we had an opportunity to resolve this Supremacy Clause issue when it came to abortion, like the example you gave about your state enacting different laws. Right. They had an opportunity to decide that, and what they said, oh, we granted cert too soon, so we're not going to decide it. You could have decided that. Now you want to decide judicial restraint? Get the out of here. Come on. It's so selective. And you know what? One of the things that we have to pay attention to, I mean, we're talking about affirmative action, but more than that, under this court's framework, Brown was decided wrong.
Come on, Ikie, speak.
Come on. Brown was decided wrong. Brown was decided based on politics and social, the Kenneth Clark Doll study. The court gave that great deference, right? Based on what they're saying is the basis for overruling precedent, is if the reasoning is flawed, and if the court relied on social science, that's not that. You shouldn't rely on that. You shouldn't realize that is ripe for overrule. That's ripe for overruling Brown.
Not only that, Ikie speaks. I'm seeing that Kyle Griffin, thank you to the team for sending this over. He's a reporter. He works at MSNBC, and he says on page 30 to 32 of this majority opinion, the conservatives also ruled that not only is a president immune with respect to his official acts, but also that evidence related to those official acts cannot come into any trial, which essentially that undoes this special counsel's indictment in some pretty significant way. Y'all could just see Ikie throwing her head back, laughing in horror. Wait, but not only that, it gets worse. It gets worse because the Civil Rights Act, let's talk about the Civil Rights Act, which prevents racism in public accommodations. That is legislation. The EEOC is a rule-making and interpreting body, and now the Supreme Court and all the justices are going to get to decide whether you're really facing discrimination. And is the Civil Rights Act valid at all? Probably not under this court. I've been predicting the end of the Civil Rights Act for years. I thought we had another couple of years. It's hard to see the Civil Rights Act is not. This is done. Like,
it's on its deathbed.
They just pulled the plug.
Yeah, I agree.
My God.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're sitting in our agreement, and we are going to take a caller. We're going to take a caller because, y'all, there are some moments when the gravity of how awful a thing is, sort of, you're interpreting it in real time. And as attorneys, when we're seeing not just this case, but we're seeing all of the other tangentially related things that are going to be impacted by this term, We
Right.
have essentially created a legal framework for 1750s America to be revived in
Yeah.
very powerful ways. And some of y'all are arguing about whether or not lineage versus race is going to empower you to reparations. Ain't going to be none at the federal level, boo-boo. I'm just going to tell you right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm on the New York State Reparations Commission.
Yes,
We
you
gonna
are.
fight for it. We gonna argue for it. But anything that we put forward, just know them Ed Blums, they're already ready. So I'm gonna need y'all to stop fighting over lineage versus race, because it ain't gonna matter when we are not on the same page. Ikie, let's get one of these callers on the line. Let's go now to, oh my goodness, we got a lot. Let's go to Sylvia in Texas, who is a first-time caller.
Mama made it.
Welcome, Sylvia. Your thoughts on all of this morning?
They are setting us up for success. Project 2025 all the way. They're making it easy for them to implement anything and everything they want to. So all those fools out there who talking about they don't want to vote and they're not sure about who they want to vote, they better think about their future. They better think about tomorrow.
That's right. You damn well better. And quite frankly, I know that some of us are in situations where, Ikie, we have to vote blue no matter who, because you got a moderate running, you got a centrist running, and it's not somebody that's really progressive, but it's either that or the Republicans. So for you people, you got to vote blue no matter who. But for the rest of us who have a choice, you better get as many progressive voices in this Congress, because we're going to need an overwhelming amount of progressive voices in the House and in the Senate in order to stop this complete lurch to the right from happening in ways that are going to be pretty significant. Let's see if we can get another caller on. Let's go now to Eric in Florida. Thank you for calling, Eric. Your thoughts this morning?
Good morning.
Morning.
So that means right now, Biden, he's covered. He can do anything he wants to, right? He's in office right now.
I mean, technically, yes.
So right now, if he say, I want to take out Trump, just take him out, and nothing can happen to Biden.
Well, here's the thing. I think we got to there are rules, and then there's the application of the rule. And what we heard Attorney Ikie Speak say is that when it came to answering direct questions, they only answer those questions when it benefits them. When it comes to avoiding direct questions, they avoid it when answering the question would hurt them. So if a Donald Trump were in office and took out his opponent, I think Donald Trump, yes, would have that full-fledged immunity applied to him. But with Joe Biden being in office, because this is a political court, this is a court that is not following judicial precedent. This is a court that is following vibes of white nationalism and Christian nationalism that they think will benefit them. Because of that, I don't know that we could say that they would interpret this as Joe Biden could do whatever he wants. I think they would do the same thing that they have done when it hurts them. They're going to find another way to get out of it. So we got to realize this court is illegitimate. And when a court is illegitimate, then we, the people, have other things that we have to consider. Ikie, what should we be asking ourselves as we're sort of dealing with the emotional overflow of this? How should we be, because the high court is clearly illegitimate, they're bought and paid for, that's not hyperbole, that is fact. What should we, the people, be thinking about when it comes to our next round of response?
I think we should be looking at our representatives and asking why no one has sought to impeach either Thomas or Alito, or at least have some sort of judiciary investigation into their activities to ensure that they are, in fact, operating without fear or favor like judges are supposed to, because it certainly doesn't look that way, right? And we can only go on the appearance of impropriety, which our ethics and our canons say that's enough. The appearance of impropriety is enough for you to pull that judge. That's enough. And it shouldn't be a different standard for the highest court, the court of last resort in our land. It should not be a different standard. So we need to press that. One thing I want to say, when we look at that Fisher case, right, that's the January 6th case where the Supreme Court looked at this statute, right? And they're like, this statute, we remember this was the statute from Enron, right? Remember back when Enron had the whole shredding documents case, and they were like, this case, the Congress's intent was to fill a loophole, right? Because back then, Congress was like, we can't be letting people shred documents and whatnot. Let's enact some legislation. So they enacted some legislation. They were like, if you cause somebody to shred some documents, that's your ass. But Congress did not include the actual person who was doing the shredding. They said, if you cause someone to shred, you on the hook, but they didn't put the person who was doing the shredding on the hook. So they had to come back and revamp the statute. So they did that. And that's how we got this statute that they're prosecuted, the January 6 people. And the the Supreme Court looks at this and says, oh, despite the fact that there's a big ass or there, right? And everybody in statutory interpretation knows that when there's an or, you typically read it in the disjunctive, meaning that you don't read those clauses together. They're like, but basically Congress's intent was for this to be a document shredding. So we're going to read that in the conjunctive, meaning we're going to read it together, meaning, and so this doesn't really apply to them. Right, because this wasn't about them doing any document mutilation or destroying or concealing of records.
Right.
And so I appreciate what Ketanji Brown tried to do, even though she concurred. She tried to give the district court some guidance, like when this case comes back. She's like, even though we ruled this way, based on the facts of this case, you kind of could twist and turn these facts to fit this statute. No, you cannot. No, you can't. You can't do that. But what the problem I'm having, right, is if you read Fisher this way, right, and you can only apply it to like what Congress intended it to apply, meaning it can't apply to anything other than document, then the 13th Amendment only applies to Black people, right? Because when Congress enacted the 13th Amendment, they didn't have white people in mind, right?
Oh, shit.
Okay, come on.
And since we no longer have a Civil Rights Act with legal standing that will be upheld, Ikie, they don't have to criminalize the homeless. We're back to being criminalized.
Yeah.
So about Underground Railroads, about underground, y'all listen. You know that how I roll. I try to find as many ways as I can for us to tap into the joy, to the gratitude, to the appreciation. Right now, I need us to tap into the serious. I need us to tap into the seriousness of what's happening, because what Ikie just said, the fact that the 13th Amendment, if we're going to go back to this 1750s judicial interpretation pattern that we seem to be on, if the 13th Amendment only applies to Black people, if the Civil Rights Act is no longer on firm legal standing, if we no longer have any of the legislations, the regulations that are coming out of agencies, and please keep in mind the agencies and regulations, that has been the place where the progressive moves have been able to not just be theorized, but implemented in practice. That's where the praxis happens. If they are no longer able to do this without the blessing of a white nationalist judge, we may not be on plantation slavery America, but we're certainly on the same legal footing as we were when it came to plantation America. So it's gonna take us some time to figure out how to move forward.
Yeah.
But I need people to understand this. We are no longer in it's theoretical, let's just debate for the sake of debating. We are no longer in a moment where people are going to be able to just opt out. We are going to have to elevate the demands we are making on us. And I mean, vote like you would never believe, but I also mean, we're going to have to figure out mutual aid like never before. We're going to have to figure out what it means when the white Christian nationalists in your city council decide they're not going to extend the clean water upgrades into your part of the community. And what are you going to do about it? What court are you going to? You're going to go to the court with the racist judge? So what are we going to have to do when it comes to getting clean water for ourselves? We're living in an era where, quite frankly, you may not be considered in the upgrades for grocery stores in your community, and you're not going to be able to sue that you're being discriminated against and not being able to access the funds for expansion of grocery stores and healthy foods on the basis of the fact that you're Black, because you're going to be suing in a court that's largely going to be populated by white Christian nationalists. So when D.W. Gurley had to go out and Black people had to go out and create towns out of entire deserts, I need us to tap into that mindset.
Yes.
To tap into the mindset of ancestors who prior to enslavement could look out and envision growth and expansion, and then had the science and the background and the engineering skill and the mathematics skill and the thinking and the community and the love and the passion and the morals to do so in a way that was equitable. We're going to have to tap into that, because when these people say they're not playing, Ikie, they really not playing.
They're not playing. They're not playing.
Any final words before we thank you so much for your time? We're going to have to get you back on these airways. I feel like we might need to make you an Urban View pass. Get her a pass to get access to Sirius.
I'm here and I'm happy to be used. I'm here and I'm happy to be used.
Any final words for us?
Information is power. That's always been my moniker. It's what I tell my students, both on a college level and a law school level. Information is empowerment. And I know that's what Urban View is about, information and action. And you cannot take action unless you are informed. So arm yourself with information. And I think that's the problem, because we're not an informed citizenry. We're not. We're not. And I think that's our downfall. That's how they get us. That's how they get us. So we need to inform ourselves. And that doesn't mean everyone needs a degree or college or education. That's not what I'm selling, right? Information is free for the most part nowadays, for the most part. Go get it. Have a curious mind, and satisfy that curiosity. But yeah,
Whew. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So I'd
stuff.
already planned on bringing on a number of folks to help us figure out what mutual aid looks like. I've used the phrase a lot. But community building, community organizing is going to be it's going to have to be at the heart of any move that we make going forward. And so I'm looking forward to that challenge. I think we can do it. And now that
Yes.
we're aware of what we're dealing with, and sometimes you need to be snapped into reality, right? I don't want this to happen, but I think this Supreme Court term is snapping a lot of people back into reality in some ways that I think are going to hopefully bring us up from the stupor that we've been in.
Right.
And we're going to have to get busy. We're going to have to get busy. Ikie Speaks,
Yeah.
what's the best way for people to connect with you? Thank you so much for your time, but how can folks follow you and get more of your wisdom between now and the next time we can get you back on these airwaves?
Thank you for having me, Lurie. It's always been a pleasure. Anytime I'm on Earth Review, you can catch me on all of the socials at Ikie Speaks, Ikie Speaks, Ikie Speaks. That's where you'll find me on everything.